Michael had never considered himself an activist or a fighter. He was a simple man, soft-spoken, thoughtful, and content to live a quiet life with his daughter, Ava. After his wife passed away, Ava had become the center of his world. He raised her with tenderness, teaching her to be strong, kind, and honest. They shared evening walks, long talks over breakfast, and a bond rooted in love and trust. But nothing prepared Michael for the day that would shake that peaceful world. It started with a sudden shift in Ava's behavior. She was 13, usually full of chatter about school projects and her friends. But over a few weeks, her laughter faded. She stopped going to drama club. She began avoiding eye contact. Then came the nightmares, whispers in her sleep, tears on her pillow. Michael's concern grew by the hour, but he didn't press. He waited, gently reassuring her, letting her know she was safe whenever she was ready to speak. And one day, she did. They were sitting on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. Ava's voice trembled as she told him what had happened. "There's a boy at school. He wouldn't leave me alone. He said things. Touched my hair. Stood too close. I told my teacher, but she said he was just being friendly." Michael's hands tightened around his coffee mug. His calm cracked. But he didn't let it show. "And?" he asked softly. "It got worse. He started grabbing my arm. Saying things about my body. Laughing when I told him to stop. I was so scared, Dad." Michael didn't sleep that night. He sat by her room, the dim hallway light casting long shadows. He felt helpless, until he realized he wasn't. He could act. He had to act. This was not a moment for quiet patience. This was a moment for courage. And for the first time in years, Michael prepared for a fight. The next day, he filed an official complaint with the school. He demanded a meeting with the administration. They listened with clipped politeness and offered vague reassurances. "We'll look into it," they said. "Boys will be boys. He probably didn't mean harm." Michael looked each one of them in the eye. "My daughter's safety is not up for discussion. If you won't take action, I will." When nothing changed within days, Michael went further. He contacted a lawyer. He spoke with other parents. Quietly, other stories began to surface, other girls who had been dismissed, ignored, silenced. Michael brought everything to light. Then came the court hearing. Ava had to testify. The thought of her, so young and already burdened by trauma, speaking in front of strangers broke something in Michael. But when the day came, she stood bravely at the witness stand, her voice steady. She told her story clearly, powerfully, unshaken. Michael watched with tears in his eyes. His daughter wasn't just surviving, she was rising. The court ruled in Ava's favor. The boy was expelled, and the school was held accountable for its negligence. But Michael knew the battle wasn't over. Justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about change. He met with the school board. He proposed a program, Ava's Voice, a student-led, teacher-supported initiative designed to raise awareness about harassment, teach respectful behavior, and provide a safe reporting system for victims. At first, the board hesitated. But public attention was mounting. Parents were watching. The community was listening. Eventually, they agreed. Within months, Ava's Voice launched. Posters filled the hallways, "Speak up. Stand strong. You are not alone." The school hosted assemblies, trained staff, and created a confidential hotline. Students who once felt silenced now had a platform. Ava was invited to speak at the first assembly. She stood before hundreds of her peers and told her story, not with shame, but with power. "I was scared," she said, "but I wasn't alone. And no one else should feel alone either." The room fell silent. Then applause broke out. Not polite, not obligatory, genuine, thunderous applause. Michael stood at the back, his heart full. This was more than justice. This was transformation. The ripple effect spread beyond the school. Other schools in the district reached out, requesting guidance to replicate the initiative. News outlets picked up the story, the girl who spoke up, and the father who fought back. Ava was invited to speak on local radio. Michael was asked to attend community panels about safe school environments. But he never made it about himself. "This isn't about me," he would say. "It's about listening when someone finds the courage to speak." Ava's confidence bloomed. She rejoined drama club. She laughed more. She held her head higher. And Michael, he learned something about himself too. That standing up doesn't require shouting. It requires conviction. That change doesn't always come with a storm, but sometimes, it begins with a whisper that someone refuses to ignore. People had always thought of Michael as quiet, soft, even passive. But the truth was, strength looks different in everyone. His strength wasn't in fists or fury, it was in love that wouldn't back down. In courage that grew the moment his daughter needed him most. And now, thanks to one brave girl and one determined father, countless others felt heard. Safe. Empowered. Because when one person stands up, it gives others the permission, and the strength, to do the same. And that's how change begins. With love. With courage. With a father's promise that no one gets left to suffer in silence again. The courtroom was quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavy, thick with tension, emotion, and anticipation. Michael sat on the edge of his seat, his eyes fixed on his daughter. 13-year-old Ava stood just a few feet away from the judge, small in stature but holding herself with a quiet strength that no one had expected. This wasn't the world Ava belonged in. Courtrooms weren't meant for children. She should have been in school, laughing with friends, planning her next play in drama club. But instead, she was here, summoned by a situation no child should ever face, because she chose not to remain silent about what had been done to her. It had started quietly, as these things often do. The unwanted attention. The inappropriate comments. The stares, the whispers, the feeling of fear that clung to her skin like a shadow. Ava had tried to brush it off, to convince herself it was just a phase, just boys being boys. But it didn't stop. The comments got bolder. The touches, more deliberate. She began shrinking in the hallways, sitting at the back of classrooms, skipping activities she used to love. When she finally told her father, her voice had trembled. "There's a boy at school. He won't stop." Michael's heart shattered. But even in his pain, he wrapped his arms around her and whispered, "I believe you. And we'll fix this." The school didn't listen. Teachers gave excuses. Administrators spoke in rehearsed lines. "It's complicated. We'll investigate. Try to ignore him." They didn't see Ava's courage, they saw inconvenience. So Michael did what a father does when his child is hurting, he fought. He filed complaints. Gathered evidence. Spoke to lawyers. And when no one would listen quietly, he took it to court. And Ava, knowing what it meant, knowing how hard it would be, chose to speak. She stood before strangers. She told them what happened in clear, unflinching words. She didn't cry, though her hands shook. She didn't back down, though fear gripped her chest. "I said no," she told the courtroom. "I told him to stop." And he laughed. The judge leaned forward. The room stayed still. There were no interruptions, no doubts. Just the truth, standing in front of them, wrapped in a child's voice that refused to be silenced. It wasn't just the testimony that changed everything, it was how Ava told it. With honesty. With strength. Without shame. And in that moment, something shifted. People saw not just a victim, but a brave young girl demanding to be heard. demanding that someone do something. The ruling came quickly. The boy was held accountable. The school was ordered to reform its policies. Ava's story made the local news. Parents in the community began asking more questions. Girls started speaking up. Something that had once been buried under layers of silence was finally being pulled into the light. But the real change happened in the days that followed. Ava's classmates started stopping her in the hallway, not out of pity, but with admiration. "I saw what you did. You were brave. I've been scared to talk about what happened to me, but you gave me courage." For the first time in weeks, Ava smiled. Not because the nightmare was over, but because she realized her voice had power. That her truth had value. Michael, watching from a distance, felt a surge of pride he couldn't put into words. He had always taught Ava to be kind, to be patient, to be gentle. But now she had taught him something. Sometimes, bravery means standing alone. Speaking when your voice trembles. And choosing truth even when the world wants you quiet. The school, now under scrutiny, launched an awareness program. Ava helped shape it. She gave suggestions, spoke at the first assembly, and insisted that it be more than just posters on walls. "This isn't just about me," she told the crowd. "It's about every kid who's ever been afraid to speak. I was one of them. But not anymore." And they listened. The initiative became a model for other schools in the district. They called it Ava's voice, but she always reminded people, it wasn't just her voice that mattered. It was the voice of every student who had been ignored, every victim who had stayed quiet because they thought no one would believe them. The truth is, the world doesn't always make space for young voices. It talks about them instead of with them. It tells them to wait, to stay in their place, to trust that adults will handle it. But sometimes, the adults don't. And when they fail, it takes someone brave enough, young enough, to say, no more. Ava did that. She reminded everyone that silence is not safety. That a quiet child may still be holding deep wounds. And that the first step toward healing isn't just justice, it's being heard. Michael never stopped supporting her, but now, the roles had shifted. He watched Ava become a leader. He watched her guide others with compassion and fierce honesty. And sometimes, when it was just the two of them at home, she'd still curl up next to him on the couch, just like when she was little. "I didn't think I could do it," she told him once. "You didn't think it," he said gently. "But you did. Because that's what bravery looks like, it's not loud or showy. It doesn't always wear a cape. Sometimes it's a girl with a soft voice, standing in a courtroom, telling the truth. And sometimes it's a father, holding her hand all the way there. Victims deserve to be heard, not when it's convenient, not when it's easy, but always." Ava's story is a reminder that even the smallest voice can start the loudest change. Because courage isn't measured by age. And healing begins the moment someone listens.
Ella had always been the nice girl. That's what everyone called her. Teachers praised her for being polite. Friends leaned on her when they needed support. Strangers found comfort in her gentle smile and soft voice. But behind that warmth was a young woman who often sacrificed her own peace just to keep others comfortable. She never said no, whether it was staying late at work, picking up a classmate's forgotten homework, or listening for hours to friends who never asked how she was doing. Her kindness was her identity. But over time, it became her cage. It wasn't that Ella didn't want to be kind. She genuinely loved helping others. But somewhere along the way, people began to expect it. Then they began to take it for granted. And then, they began to take advantage. She first noticed it with Mia, her best friend since childhood. Mia would call at any hour, vent for hours, borrow money and never mention it again. Ella never complained. She just smiled and said, "Of course." But after years of giving and rarely receiving, she began to feel hollow. Drained. Alone in a crowd of people she was always helping, but who rarely looked back. Then there was her job. Ella worked in a small bookstore, where she stayed late to help her manager close up, even though it wasn't her responsibility. She covered shifts without being asked and organized the cluttered backroom on her days off. Her co-workers appreciated her, at first. But soon, they just expected her to fix everything. When she once asked for help moving a heavy box, one of them chuckled, "Come on, Ella. You're the strong one here, remember?" It wasn't strength they respected, it was her silence. One particular evening, something changed. Ella had spent the entire day helping organize a charity event for her local community. It was hot, chaotic, and exhausting. She hadn't eaten all day. And as the event was winding down, Mia showed up, frantic. "I forgot my presentation for work tomorrow," Mia said. "Can you help me put it together tonight? Please, Elle. I can't do it without you." Ella hesitated. For the first time in a long while, her body said no, even if her heart still ached to say yes. She looked at Mia, her lifelong friend, and realized that if she didn't set a boundary now, she never would. "I'm really tired," she said quietly. "I need to rest tonight." Mia blinked. "You're serious?" Ella nodded. "I'm always there for you. But tonight, I need to be there for me." There was a pause. Then Mia scoffed. "Wow. Okay. I guess I know where we stand now." And she walked away. Ella stood there, alone again. But this time, the loneliness felt different. Not like abandonment, but like freedom. She had chosen herself, even when it hurt. That night, Ella didn't cry. She didn't second guess. She made tea, sat on her porch, and for the first time in a long time, she felt something new, peace. The days that followed weren't easy. Mia didn't call. Some co-workers gave her side eyes when she declined a late shift. A few people said she was changing, as if that was a betrayal. But quietly, something beautiful was beginning to bloom inside her. She started saying no. Not angrily. Not with guilt. But with clarity. "I'd love to help, but I can't today. I'm not available this weekend, but I hope you find what you need. I need rest. That's important to me." And instead of her world collapsing, something unexpected happened. The people who truly respected her stayed. And they adjusted. Some apologized. Others began to share more responsibility. Even Mia, after weeks of silence, showed up one evening with a timid smile and tears in her eyes. "I was wrong," she said. "You've always been there for me. I never asked what you needed." They talked for hours. This time, it wasn't one-sided. It was a conversation, balanced, honest, mutual. And for the first time, Ella realized something powerful. Kindness is not weakness. True kindness isn't about self-sacrifice to the point of self-destruction. It isn't about saying yes to everything, or avoiding conflict just to keep others comfortable. It's about choice. It's about knowing your worth, your limits, and still choosing compassion, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. Kindness without boundaries is not kindness, it's fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of not being liked. Fear of being seen as selfish. But when kindness is rooted in self-respect, it becomes transformative. It teaches others how to treat you. It creates healthier relationships. It models strength, not just for yourself, but for others who may be afraid to speak up too. Ella didn't become colder, she became clearer. She didn't stop caring, she just started caring for herself too. At work, she trained a new hire and taught them not just how to shelve books, but how to take breaks and speak up when overwhelmed. At the community center, she volunteered once a month, instead of every week, and put her heart fully into it, without burning out. And when a friend called in the middle of the night with an emergency, she still answered, but now, it was a choice, not a duty. People noticed. They began to admire her not just for her warmth, but for her wisdom. She wasn't a doormat anymore, she was a light, standing firmly on her own foundation. Because kindness doesn't mean saying yes to everyone. Kindness means showing up, with heart, with empathy, with truth. And sometimes, the most powerful act of kindness you can offer the world is showing others how to love themselves, by choosing to love yourself first. Ella learned that. Not all at once. But piece by piece, boundary by boundary, truth by truth. And the world didn't lose a kind girl. It gained a strong woman. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, it really means a lot. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and don't forget to subscribe to support the channel. Your support helps me keep telling stories that matter. Thank you so much for being here, and remember, kindness is strength.